So once you open it with Actionscript 3.0, you can then, of course, extend the size of your canvas. They call it the stage here. Just in the properties panel again. FPS here is frames per second. The lower frame rate, the less the quality of the animation, but the less the amount of frames the piece has to render, making your file size smaller, which is better. Desktop here. Okay. To bring in a file, you know, I'm kind of done with these sort of vector shapes. I want to just bring in a rasterized art file. What you do is go to File and Import to Library. You can also import it into the stage as well, stage being that canvas, that white space, right? And I can actually, let's see, I guess I can import this PSD file. So I selected my PSD file, and it's asking me then if I want to import this, what kind of layers I want to import, etc. Let's see here. I can select all layers to import. I can just select the one that I want. I'll bring in this green one. Let's see. I can import the layer image as a flattened bitmap image, which is good. I can actually create a movie clip out of it, which is what I want to do if I want to animate this thing. So I'll right away just select that. Registration, this is where my registration point is going to be in the image. I can change that later, so I'll just leave it as is. Actionscript 3.0. So, as I'm importing this then, I'll do my compression as lossless, so I don't lose any quality here, and then import. So as I imported that file, it's just going to place it into the library panel here. It's going to import all kinds of stuff from it. But the library essentially is a place where all of the stuff that I import is going to go, so I can grab it. So I can, if I know like all of the elements, if my storyboard was spot on and accurate and I knew, yep, I'm going to grab this shoe, or I'm going to take this image, or I'm going to take this element of some kind, and I'm going to use it, I know for sure, in my composition. You can just import all of your stuff at once, and you'll never have to navigate to your desktop and import anything again. So everything could just be essentially stored here in your library. And then at that point, you would just be able to drag it out from there, place it on the canvas, and then just start kind of working with it. Okay, so I can just modify, transform this piece, and hit free transform. Again, this is just like that transform tool in Photoshop, so I'm going to grab a corner, hold shift, and then bring it down. And you can see here that this is, you know, this piece is on my timeline here. I have a very hard to see, but I have my little circle on my timeline here where the art was placed. I can go to frame 30, then I'll click that frame. I'll hit Control and then click again, and then I'll insert a keyframe. Right, so just like we animated those shapes, this is the same exact idea, except we're using a photography content now. And then that's essentially how I'm going to work this thing. I'm going to then, on frame 30, grow this thing maybe to a larger size. position it kind of straight. I can use my nudge keys too to nudge it around a bit. And I can click this area between my two keyframes and then hit Control click again and then create the classic tween. And then my shoe will just animate in that fashion. Alright. So now if you remember, the way to test this movie is we go to Control and then Test. This is going to create an SWF file that saves on my desktop. So I'm going to close that up and show you where that goes. Since I opened up this file, I saved it on my desktop, this SWF file is then going to save there as well. And this is basically what the file does. It goes from frame 0 to frame 30 and then starts over again and repeats over and over until infinity. The good part is that it's working as expected. The bad part is that's not really what I want it to do. What I want it to do, let's just say I want naturally what I'd want it to stop at the end of its growth or animation. So in the timeline here, what I'm going to do is actually just click on frame 30, and then this is where I can get my actions. So I go up to Window, and then go down to Actions. And then this panel here is where we're going to kind of be doing a lot of the button work and the animation work. So I opened Actions from the Window panel, and then there's this Code Snippets option here. It's like these two carrots on the sides. That's the next thing we got to click on. The window that you're looking at now, right here in the Actions panel, is where code is going to be populated. So whenever I apply an action to something on the canvas, my code is going to go into that window over here. So where do I get my code without having to know how to code? That's in this Code Snippets window here, and I got to it from this little option right here in my Actions menu. It's very easy to lose that, and so just ask a lot of questions if that comes up and it starts missing. So once I click that double caret symbol and I open up my Code Snippets palette here, I'm going to shrink this up. I can't really do that. All right. I'm going to click on these folders here. So this top folder here says Actionscript. That's the kind of script that we want this to start working. So we'll just click this little down caret arrow piece here. And then there's a lot of these different options that you can do: load, unload, audio, video, event handlers, animation. These are all just kind of options that you can choose code from. But what I need to do is find the stop action, because when we get to frame 30, we want this video to stop instead of repeating over and over till infinity. And so that stop action is under this timeline navigation menu. And then it's the option that says stop at this frame. If I double click this stop at this frame option, my stop action is going to populate here in this actions menu, and it's going to basically stop my video once we reach frame 30. Okay, so I have frame 30 selected down here. I'm all good there. So I'll just stop at this frame. I'll double click that, and so the code that comes up is this. This piece of code here will stop the video at frame 30. Once the shoe grows all the way, it'll stop now. How do we know how to use these actions? Aside from me just telling you, is that they have these little instructions here. So this instruction is between this little star symbol and backslash, and then this or forward slash, and this forward slash star symbol. It just says what the action that I just clicked on does. And these are just code. This are just tips. This is not really like this is not really like actual code. So it really is. It's telling us it's going to stop at the frame. The timeline will stop and pause at the time where you insert this code here, and that's essentially it for all movie clips. So we're good. So if all was well, this movie is going to stop where it needs to. I'm going to hide this down here because it gets really annoying. So that's going to work, and the way we know that's going to work on frame 30 is that there's a little symbol here on the timeline, and I wonder if I can zoom in on that, but essentially it adds a new layer on top of the existing layer, and then Animate is going to call it actions. And the way I know that there's an action on frame 30 is that I have a little A here on frame 30 on the actions layer, and that's how I know that there's an action there. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go ahead and run another test under, let's see, I'm sorry, control test. And then so now the shoe is not, repeating over and over again to infinity, that it's going to keep growing and growing and growing, okay? So at this point in our movie, what do we want to happen, What does my storyboard say next? What happens? Let's just say I should have done a storyboard if I was doing this the right way, but, of course I'm winging it, so let's just say that I want some type to come up, right? And then I want that type to be a rollover button. Maybe I want this shoe to change color at frame 30. Between frame 30 and 60, I want it to change to a different color or something like that. We can do that too. I can actually adjust where the shoe is going to be. I mean, it looks a little bit too far to the top, so I want it to kind of nudge it down a little bit. And then let's press the Enter key or return to see, yep, the animation looks a little bit better there. I've just nudged it down a little bit. That's not going to affect my action whatsoever because my action is, here in this case is essentially applied to frame 30. So whatever's happening at frame 30 is going to stop no matter what. So I'll try it again and just see it with the newer animation. It's a little bit lower this time, so that's perfect. Okay. Let's do some text. So I'm going to grab some text. I'm going to do a text button. I'm going to drag it out. And I'm going to say, I'll just call it color change or something. I'm going to change the text color. I'm going to change the font. So go up to properties here. Properties again, whatever tool you have, you can have going. The properties palette is going to be a good place to just jump to and change properties of any element or type of element that you have selected on the canvas. So you're not going to really have your traditional text editing menu. You're going to have this properties palette where you can change the properties of your text. Or put change color because that makes more grammatical sense. I'll change it to black. I'm going to move this kind of down here in the middle. I want to make this a button. Let's see, where do I have this at? So let me just replay my video. So what I have here is, what I was doing is I actually put this change color button onto only frame 30 because I started building it on frame 30. I didn't take into account that I need to make a new layer for that change color button. So now it's just going to reappear when the shoe completely grows. I'm going to put it on a new layer because I want it to be a little bit more manageable than being on the same layer and causing a lot of confusion as the shoe. So I'm just, just like any other Adobe software, a copy, cut. So Command C, Command X. Layer 3, I just made a new layer over here by clicking that little symbol. Created my new timeline, and I'm going to do edit. I think I can do a paste in place. Yeah, so up in edit, you just go paste in place. It'll paste it exactly in that same place. All right, good. Let's say now this type, I'm going to make it into a button. So what you have to do is it's a lot like creating outlines out of type in InDesign or Illustrator or something like that. The fact that I can double click this and manipulate it is good, but I can't do any very complex animating to it at all. So I have to convert this type to a button symbol or a movie clip symbol. The difference between those two, and the reason why I'm going to convert it to a button rather than a movie clip, is that I want this to actually have some rollover states and be easy to work with as a button, because that's going to be its purpose. So essentially I'm going to control click that, and I'm going to convert it to a symbol. Instead of movie clip in this case, I'm going to select button. I'll just call it like color. Okay. So now that that's a button, I can double click it and it's not going to edit any of the text at all. It's kind of like created outlines now. It's not editable text at this point. So what I did then is I double clicked change color, and you can see now in my bottom timeline all of my other layers went away. My actions layer is gone. My shoe layer is gone down here. All you can see now is this layer 1. And you can see that I have these different, what look like larger slides or frames here, and they're named up, over, down, hit. So these are actually states of the button that we're actually going to define right now. So up means basically that the up state within a button is basically the state that the button looks when there's nothing like happening to it at all. You're not hovering over it or anything. It's just what the button looks like when you don't have a mouse over it. The over state is the rollover state, obviously. So what does the button look like when your mouse is hovered over it? The down state is what does the button look like when you have your finger clicked on the mouse? So you click down, does it turn a color? Does it not? Does it disappear? Whatever. And then the hit state, and it's not really a hit state, it's actually a hit area. So this is the area at which the button is clickable. Okay. I'm not going to mess with that hit state right now because I want to show you what it's like without a hit state defined and how easy it is, or not so easy it is, to click that button. So this area here, to make changes to it, this works exactly the same as it does with elements within your animation timeline. So let's define an over state for it. What I'm going to do again is click over. I'm going to control click that over frame there. I'm going to hit insert keyframe. So it's really just going to copy the same exact thing that I did from the up state over to the over state. At this point, I can just make a change to it, just like I would with regular animation, where I had the shoe small on one frame and then the shoe large on frame 30, and I created a tween between 1 and 30 to make it look like it's growing. This is the same kind of concept. I just created a keyframe here for the over state, and I'm going to make a change. So I'll make it, this really obnoxious kind of green color. And then the down state, I'll make a state for that. So I'll, under down then, I'm going to control click again and insert keyframe. So this is the color that I want it to change when I click. By inserting a keyframe, again, it just made an exact same copy of what the overstate was. I'll double click that, type, and then I'll go over this black again, so it'll turn black. And then I'll just leave it at that. So now again, if you remember, I'm within this button timeline here. So I'm within the timeline of just this simple button here. The way I jump out of it and back to my main timeline is I hit this back button. You can see that these symbols tell me my path to where I'm at currently in the workspace here. So I'm within the color button here. So this is a button symbol. This is the name of it, and then which is within scene 1, which is my main timeline scene. And that's as deep as it gets. So I'm going to click back to scene 1, or I could just click that back button here, that back arrow button. Okay, so let's test and see how that button is working, if it's working or not. I usually test a lot. Yep. So now you see how I got this button working good. You see how it's kind of flickering on and off as I'm dragging across this. This is because my hit state is not defined. So the only thing that I'm going to be able to click is actually like text within this button. So if I'm going even between the gap between the C up here, the gap between the O, my button is turning on or off. So this is the reason then why I need to define a hit state. I want to make this easy to click. So I want to make like it clickable from out here on the outer edges, right? Rather than like having to go exactly, onto that letter and so on and so forth. So I want my button to kind of spread out a bit. So that's what I'm going to define that hit state with. So what I'm going to do then is click on that change color button again. I have it selected, but now I have to go into that button to see those different hit down and over states. So I'll double click it, and under the hit state then I'm going to highlight that, and I'm actually going to draw a shape. So it doesn't really matter what color the shape is or anything, but it's going to be invisible once I get out of this button. So I'm going to make it nice and big, wrap around those letters, and then I'm just going to press the back button to jump out of it again. And that's where I drew my hit state. So now I'm going to save it and then go to Control Test. There's my animation, and then see now my hit state is a little bit more extended. It's a little bit more user-friendly now. I don't have to be exactly on that. It's not going away as I run through the letters and so on and so forth. Now, of course, this doesn't do anything when I click on it. It's actually turning black, which I don't know what that's not supposed to do that. So let me just get rid of that. So I'm going to insert a keyframe or insert a frame there, just a blank frame on the hit state. And then I'm going to draw my shape again. See how that worked. No, not quite. I'll remove that. I'll go ahead and just insert a keyframe there, and then just draw that box again over the hit state. And I still got the hit state, but when I click now, it's not going to turn black. So really I want this button to do something. So I just have to figure out what I want it to do. Of course, when it says change color, I'll just have it change a color. So the layer, of course, that I want to change the color to is this shoe layer. So I'm going to ask myself, how many frames do I want it to take from the current state we're seeing the shoe to change a color to a different state. So I guess 60 frame, this can always be tweaked, but I'm going to insert a keyframe over here at 60, and that's going to make a copy of this shoe. And now you can see that this on my palette here, my button has disappeared for change color. And this is because right here, my timeline playhead is over here at 60, but my artwork for my button here ends at 30. So a very easy way to fix that is just to take this artwork from this button here at 30 and just drag it out to 60. And then my artwork is gonna, actually let me undo that. I want to drag it out like that. I want to click, hold, and drag. Nope. Actually, I'm just going to insert a frame, and there we go. So it's just going to extend it out. Essentially, that's what I wanted it to do because it was missing at 60 because it was cut off here at 30. And I don't want that to go away. So then I'm going to go to the shoe at 60, frame 60, and I'm going to do a color effect to it just to change the color of it pretty quickly. Let's see, tint. I'll choose. That's. Go with. Yeah, that's too much. I wonder if. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna select tint, and I'm gonna get rid of this actual tint, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just increase it a little bit, and then I'm gonna tweak some of these other colors. No, I'm not crazy about that. Hold on a second. Well, I could make it bright and disappear. What else can I do? I don't want that. So RGB value. Basically just kind of tweak the color a little bit just to give you an idea of what I can do with the button. So let's just say we were okay with that. I'm going to control click and make that classic tween again. So that's going to get my color animation going. And then what I'm going to do is once this frame stops, here at this point, I'll test it out and show you. I have all that artwork doing that color change at the end, but again, my stop is set there, so it's not playing the rest of this animation here on the timeline. All right, so it's not doing this at the end. It's just straight up stopping right here at 30. So then what I'm going to do is actually tie this button into the timeline to make it then play from frame 31 and then go all the way to frame 60 and finish the movie, and then thus get that color change done, right? Okay, so to do that, then I'm just going to tell this button on click, go to and play frame 31, which is the frame that comes after my stop command, which is on frame 30. And I'll do that through Actionscript. So I'll click on my button, go to Window and Actions. Oops, get my button clicked there. Then again, I'll go into this little caret symbol. And then again, I'll go under Actionscript folder here. And then I'll go under the actions this time. Let me see. Nope, it's not under actions. It's under timeline navigation. And then timeline navigation will give me these options. And I'm looking for a click to go to frame and play. And then that's this one. Click to go to frame and play. Okay, so I'll double click that. The selected symbol requires an instance name. Okay, so this pops up because I didn't name my button. So I'll just hit OK. And let's see, I'll undo that. Oop. I'll just delete it. So what I'm going to do is actually click my button and then go up here. In the properties palette, it gives it this name, this instance name when I hover over this box. So I'm just going to call it like color, because that'll be my name of my button. I'll hit enter. So now when I have my color button selected and I go over here to click to go to frame and play, and it pops all the code in there, I don't get that dialog box. But I do get all of this like instruction here. So clicking on specified symbol instance moves the playhead to the specific frame in the timeline and continues playback from that frame. So then it gives me a little further instruction. It says replace the number 5 in the code below with the frame number you would like the playhead to move to when the symbol instance is clicked. Okay, so in this code here, just to give you like a little insight, we don't really need to really read this essentially, but I'll tell you kind of what's happening here. This is my button name, and it says button name, add event listener, mouse event click. So it's basically saying when this color button here is clicked, it's going to go to and play from frame to blah blah blah, go to and play. Now I have to pick the frame that I want it to play. So that's 31 because that's the next frame after 30 where my stop action is. From that point it's going to play 31 after I click, and it's going to go through to 60, and then we'll see what happens. I'll just hope this works. The thing is that with this, it's all about just making a move and then checking it, testing it, make a move, test it, make a move, and test. So it's just a constant making a move and testing. It's okay. So there, I've gone from, let's redo it. So here it goes frame 0 to 30, stop, and then my hover state is not tied to the timeline at all. It's just a button that will constantly hover, have a hover state as much as I want. It just is what it is. Now I'll click, it'll go to and play frame 31, go to the end of the timeline, and then since I don't have a stop at the end of my movie, it's going to start all over again and back to frame 1. So click frame 31 through 60, back to 0, back to 30, and stop. So of course, I'd probably want it to stop at frame 60. So I'm gonna, on my timeline here, just kind of click over here to something on frame 60. It doesn't matter which layer it is, because the stop action is going to apply to all layers in this movie. So I'm at frame 60, double click stop at this frame. There you'll see my action pops up in the timeline. Save it and test it again. 0 to 30, it works as expected. Hover's good, click 31 to 60, and then stop. Is that kind of making sense there so far? Let's see how all these things work together as far as like the interactions and the animations and stuff. All right. Let's see. We can look here under the code snippets, and you'll see this is all this is stopping, going to, and playing, going to and stopping. It's just that's how this whole interactivity thing's going to work. Let's say we get to the end of this movie and we have a stop action here. I want to be able to then, actually I'll move this here. I moved the stop action to frame 61. This is where everything disappears off the canvas. And then at this point, I'm going to add a new button on frame 61, insert blank keyframe. Okay, so this is a blank keyframe. This is my blank canvas. At the end of this movie, I'm going to have just a button here. I'm going to drag it out. I'm going to call it start over. Oop, I'm going to spell it way better than that. Okay. Alright, this thing's going to pop up really kind of quick and not very fancy like at all. I'm not going to fade it in or anything. You can fade it in. You could fade this thing in or whatever. You can make it kind of a fancier button, if you will. But I'm just going to give you kind of the gist of it to show you how we can then reset this movie via some buttons. So again, I created a new frame here at frame 61 where everything is gone now. It's disappeared from my timeline. I can get it back if I want, but just by dragging this playhead down here. You can see this is going to play all the way, and then it's just going to go away and stop here at 60. I'll convert this start over button that I just created at 61 to a symbol. I'll just leave it as a button symbol. Okay. Again, I'll name this button so I still have it selected. I'll give it a name, restart, and this is gonna be my kind of reset button here. I got it clicked. I'm going to then choose my option here in the timeline navigation. Which one would I choose? Click to go to frame and play. I'll double click it. Yep, all preset. You don't have to type code at all in this. So again, I just double clicked it and then it just populated up right here in my code window, which is actually called your actions window. And again, according to the instructions, replace the number 5 in the code below. Okay, go to and play 5. I'm going to replace that with then frame 1. So when I click this button, then it's going to go all the way to frame 1 and start this whole thing over again. But it'll be on our terms rather than having Animate just recycle over and over and over again. Okay, so let's test it and actually see if that worked. Because a lot of times I'll do something and it won't work. Click. And then it stopped, so that's good. And then see how my hover state is all really fussy? So that's something I gotta fix. But the button works. The overstate fussiness, that's easy to do. I'm just gonna double click the button. I'll go to my hit state, control click, insert keyframe. So it's gonna make a copy of what I have there. And then I'm just gonna draw a big box over it so it's easier to click on. Of course, the box goes away when I jump back out of the button. They just make the box visible, very obvious and visible here, so I can see it and manipulate it if I wanted to later on. But in actuality, this is going to be invisible. And then I'll test it again. Okay, change color, and starts over. There you go. Okay, I'm changing it, to this pink color or whatever here. What if I wanted to have another button that changed it to blue? I could easily do that instead of going to, so that change color, let's say it's change color blue up top here. what I would do is have that button go to and play, not frame 31, where I have my color change animation here to magenta. I'll have it go somewhere else to another point in the timeline, like let's say out here at 70 or something. And I'll say go to and play frame 70 where I have my blue color change animation happen. But this is the very basic of it, is clicking and stopping and going to and playing and all that.
That's not the motion presets, is it? Behind your actions tab. What window is that?
Oh, my go to and play?